Episode 103. Seeing Han Li remain silent after he finished speaking, the old man couldn't help but feel a little anxious.
I have an idea. I wonder if you'd like to hear it, junior brother. It's absolutely guaranteed to get us all through this trip safely.
The old man put on an inscrutable expression, looking utterly mysterious, the wrinkles on his forehead bunching together. Han Li found it both irritating and amusing. Meanwhile, the young man with the yellow hair seemed to hold the old codger in high esteem. Though he said nothing, his expression made it clear he was ready to follow the old man's lead. Since he had no intention of joining their alliance, Han Li saw no point in dragging this out any further.
Sorry, but I've never been one for working with others, and I don't plan on starting now. If you're looking for someone to team up with, senior brother, you'd best find another fellow disciple.
Han Li was being brutally honest. He knew that only by showing he was no greenhorn could he make the other man give up completely and stop pestering him. Otherwise, with so few fellow disciples here, this senior brother Shang would likely latch onto his target and pester them relentlessly at the slightest hint of possibility.
Han Li didn't want to be pestered by him indefinitely.
Upon hearing this, the old man realized he'd targeted the wrong person. The person before him looked young, but spoke with the seasoned ease of a veteran who'd weathered many storms. So, without another word, he took his leave. They were heading straight for another disciple meditating on a rock. Han Li gave a faint smile, then turned his body back around to continue observing those few fellow disciples who had caught his attention. This time, however, he spotted junior sister Chen standing with another rather plain-looking young woman. A few seemingly dashing young men had gathered loosely in the vicinity. Han Li's mouth twitched a few times. For some reason, the more he looked at those guys, the more they grated on him. In the end, he decided to simply get them out of his sight. He found a secluded spot and settled in to rest with his eyes closed. The next morning, all the disciples gathered once more on the mountain peak, forming orderly ranks as they waited for the arrival of the other immortal sects. Hours passed, and still, not a single soul was in sight. This had Han Li cursing inwardly, almost suspecting the other sects had done this on purpose to drain the stamina of the Yellow Maple Valley contingent. To add to his agitation, whether by coincidence or design, junior sister Chen was positioned to his immediate right. Her familiar feminine scent kept wafting into his nostrils. It made his mind wander, as if he were back in that night of intoxicating passion. To hide his discomfort, Han Li had no choice but to lower his head and feign nervousness. But in his heart, he cursed himself for being so useless. It was just a pretty woman, and she'd already thrown him so completely off balance. At that moment, Han Li couldn't help but feel a certain respect for the elder Li standing at the very front.
He'd held that pose, gazing at the sky, for so long without moving a muscle. Was he lost in thought, or had his spirit truly wandered beyond the heavens?
Suddenly, Han Li felt a ripple of agitation pass through the people around him, as if something had happened. All the fellow disciples around him craned their necks, gazing toward one edge of the horizon. Han Li followed their line of sight and looked up. In the azure sky, several star-like points of light flickered into view, gradually growing larger. Moments later, they resolved into a string of black dots. Beneath them, silver light flashed. It seemed these dots were riding that starlight down from beyond the heavens. At the sight of this spectacle, the crowd's agitation grew even more intense.
Quiet! What kind of state are you all in? That's the Clear Void sect's flying magic tool, the Crimson Blood Silk. Don't make a scene and embarrass our Yellow Maple Valley.
A short-limbed, middle-aged steward at the front scowled and turned to bark a reprimand. His words proved effective, and the commotion died down immediately. Of course, the occasional muttered complaint still slipped out. The black dots were now clear. They were cultivators in gray Taoist robes. Most were genuine Taoist priests, holding horsetail whisks and wearing their hair in topknots. But a few, while dressed in the robes. The rest were dressed in completely secular fashion, clearly lay disciples who had not taken monastic vows. Han Li and the others could now see clearly. The star beneath their feet was actually a flawless white rainbow bridge, dotted with dazzling, twinkling lights, as if studded with countless gems. While Han Li was still observing it closely, the white rainbow bridge had already carried the Clear Void sect members down onto the mountain, landing directly opposite the Yellow Maple Valley group. The leading middle-aged Taoist gave a light wave of his hand. In a flash of white light, the crimson bridge formed by the bloody silk vanished. He now held a brocade-like object in his hand.
I didn't expect it would be Patron Li leading the team again. This humble Daoist Fu Yunzi pays his respects.
The Taoist took a few steps to stand before Benefactor Li. From the sound of it, they seemed to be acquainted.
If a cow-nosed priest like you can come, why can't I, old Lee, be here?
Within our respective sects, you and I are the ones who reached the core formation stage the latest. If we don't do the legwork, who will?
You sly old fox, you tricked me good last time. Don't even think about pulling that stunt again.
What do you mean by that, Benefactor Li? A bet's a bet, fair and square. Who's tricking who here?
At those words, a flash of cold light flickered in Benefactor Li's eyes, as if he were about to erupt in anger. But then he seemed to think of something, and his imposing aura subsided.
That piece of refined iron I had was forged into your Azure Army sword. Must have boosted its power a notch. I spent over a decade refining that one piece, and you damn priest, got it for nothing.
His words were dripping with jealousy, clearly pained by the loss of that so-called iron essence.
So the renowned immortal master Li is so concerned about a mere bit of iron essence. All right then. The other item I've brought this time is definitely superior to that iron essence. If you win this bet, it'll more than make up for your last loss.
No bet. Absolutely not. Do you think I'd fall for the same trick twice in a row?
No bet? Oh my, Benefactor Li's standards have become so high that even the inner core of a bloodline flood dragon beast can't catch your eye.
The Taoist put on a look of exaggerated shock and disbelief, but to Han Li it seemed utterly fake.
The bloodline flood dragon's core.
The very name of the item caused a drastic shift in the expression of Benefactor Li, who had sworn to have nothing more to do with Taoists.
Isn't that right? I heard that Benefactor Li, for the sake of this treasure, once lived by the treacherous rapids of the dragon-turning river in Yuanwu Kingdom for a full 30 years, yet in the end he still departed with regret. So this time I spent a fortune to have it specially sought out for you.
Impossible. A bloodline flood dragon is incredibly rare to find, let alone preserving its inner core intact. You're not just spouting nonsense to mess with me, are you?
As a man of the cloth, I do not speak falsehoods. You may see for yourself.
The Taoist didn't want to waste words explaining. With a flip of his hand, a white, blood-veined orb appeared before Patriarch Li, making his eyes light up with a covetous gleam. He looked ready to snatch it right out of the air.
If your silver-scaled python consumes this pill and goes into seclusion for a decade or two, it will surely leap from the mid-foundation establishment stage straight to the late stage. With another century or so of dedicated cultivation, reaching the core formation stage isn't out of the question.
Ancestor Li snorted at the words, his face set in a stern mask, appearing unmoved. But his flickering gaze betrayed the turmoil within.
You're hesitating over such a rare wager? Do you really have so little faith in your own sect's disciples?
The disciples of our Yellow Maple Valley are not for your Clear Void sect to judge.
He then swept his gaze over the group behind the Taoist, quickly gauging the strength of the Clear Void sect disciples. They seemed roughly on par with the Yellow Maple Valley disciples.
All right, I'll take that bet. But which of my treasures have you got your eye on this time?
After some thought, Patriarch Li concluded the odds of winning this bet were about 50-50. combined with his intense desire for that inner core, he finally gave a nod of agreement. But out of caution, he asked casually,
This humble Taoist has no interest in your other treasures. Should I win this wager by chance, I merely hope that the master will refine 2 more pieces of iron essence of the same size for me within the next 20 years. The purity of Patriarch Li's true fire is renowned throughout the 7 great sects. Surely this is a trivial matter for you.
2 more pieces of the same iron essence? You old goat, are you trying to turn me into your pack mule?
Oh, come on. If you win, you won't have to worry about that. That's the core of a 5th grade demon beast, equivalent to a cultivator at the early core formation stage. It's absolutely worth the price.
After a long moment, Ancestor Li finally extended a hand, saying slowly,
We'll follow the same rules as last time. First, we compare the total quantity of spirit herbs collected. Second, we assess their quality. And finally, we tally the number of disciples who make it out of the Forbidden Land alive.
Of course. Everything stays the same.
The Taoist was overjoyed. He hastily extended a palm to meet the others in a slap, sealing the wager. A crisp smack rang out. The Taoist had indeed slapped palms with someone, but his expression held no joy. Instead, it fell into one of utter dismay. He hadn't struck the hand of Patriarch Li at all. Instead, it was another filthy hand that had materialized out of thin air. It appeared with eerie abruptness between the 2 men, coated in grease and grime, looking as if it hadn't been washed in ages. The disciples from both sects, who had been intently following their patriarch's conversation, stared in stunned silence at this ghostly spectacle.
Respectful Senior Chung.
Oh, don't call me senior. I don't deserve that. I'm at the core formation stage, just like you 2. I just entered it a few years earlier, that's all.
A lazy voice sounded between the 2 of them, and a strangely dressed figure gradually materialized. He wore a blue robe patched in several places, with short hair cropped to a few inches. A faded, pale green cloth bag was tucked at his waist, suggesting a man who prized cleanliness. Yet his face was smeared with a thick, black, greasy layer, obscuring his true features completely.
Years. Try centuries.
Once they got a clear look at the newcomer's face, Patriarch Li and the Taoist priest could only share a bitter inward laugh. It really is him, they thought, not daring to show the slightest hint of disrespect. This eccentric was not only terrifyingly old, with 1 foot already in the nascent soul stage, but his unique invisible escape art was also renowned throughout the cultivation world, its fame reaching even the sects of several neighboring nations. Perhaps because his great limit was approaching, yet he had never fully stepped into the nascent soul stage. His temperament had grown increasingly bizarre over the last century. He took great delight in tormenting core formation cultivators, leaving the scant 10 or so high-level cultivators from the 7 great sects utterly humiliated.